The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. We had a little bit of technical difficulty we had to solve here this morning, but we are ready to go. I know there's been a lot of interest this morning for this webinar. I will tell you that we're going to try to get everything in within the hour. If we don't, we will schedule a follow-up webinar so that we can get you all the information you need. But I will tell you just real quick, if you have any questions, type them into that question box. We will get them answered during the question periods. And this webinar is being recorded. We're going to post it up on our website, which is enovia.com, by the end of today. So without any further ado, Joseph, I'm going to hand it right over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Abby, and welcome everyone. I find this topic of using Team Foundation Server to manage development projects an interesting topic. One of the challenges with development is kind of keeping track of modifications that have been done, and this is a really good tool for that. So I'm going to kind of jump right in. Here's an overview of what we'll be talking about today. The first thing I will talk a little bit about how to get started with Team Foundation Server. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, just kind of those first steps sometimes can be overwhelming, and so I'll try to help you get through that. I'll talk a little bit about kind of one-time preparations for Team Foundation Server to get it set up in a way that makes it useful for managing NAV development. I will then talk in more detail about managing a NAV project in Team Foundation Server. I'll talk about a couple different projects. One is a larger project, but then I'll go through an example with a smaller project, which will be easier to show in a short period of time during this webinar. And finally, I'll wrap up with talking about how we use the information in Team Foundation Server and how it helps both Enovia and our clients. I mean, the reason we take the time to put information, to document our code and to keep track of it in a tool like Team Foundation Server is not just to have the information there, but to be able to use it. And so I will be talking about that at the end. Before going into it, I wanted to just mention several different resources that I used either in preparing this presentation, and I recommend them highly to you as well, or tools that I use, or I guess advertising blogs that I am doing or have done on this topic. So the first three are YouTube videos by Soren Clemenson. It's a series of three videos, and they cover a lot of the same information that I'll be covering today, but kind of from a bit of a different viewpoint. So he talks about setting up Team Foundation Server and Visual Studio, preparing it for NAV development, and an in-depth topic on branching and merging with Team Foundation Server. There's a tool that that is important, that's very useful or almost essential for using Team Foundation Server. It's an object splitter tool, and I will be using the one that's NAV Object Splitter version 3.0. You can find that on Mabuso. If you Google that, you can find that download. And if you have trouble finding it, you can get in touch with me. I think Abby will provide that contact information at the end. And finally, I'll mention my two blogs. One I already have done, and some of you may have already seen it. on the initial setup for using Team Foundation Server in the cloud for managing Dynamics NAV source code. And coming very soon is one that's called How Innovia Consulting Uses Team Foundation Server to Manage Development Projects. And that second one is very similar to what I will be covering in today's webinar. So the first thing I want to do is to show you how to connect to the Visual Studio Team Services website, how to create a team project in the cloud, and how to connect to this team project from Visual Studio. And these are all kind of steps that you're going, or at least the way that I use Team Foundation Server, this is how I do it, and how I would suggest that you do it as well. So let me talk a little bit about this before I show this. The first part, Team Foundation Server is a code repository. It's a place for storing a history of the modifications that I make or that you make to your NAV code. And this has the capability of storing all of the versions of that code. So let me give an example of that. Let's suppose that you added a field to the sales header table and maybe the sales order document page. And you did that, let's say, today. And then a week from today, you add some additional fields to that sales header page, and maybe you also add that field to the sales invoice header page and the posted sales invoice document. Well, one of the things we've done is we've modified the sales header table and page and the sales document page twice, just in that simple example. But within NAV, you only have the current version. You don't have a history of changes that were made over time. Now you can put comments in the NAV object and the sales header table and page, and I encourage you to do that. But I always wonder, did I forget to make a comment about something, or did things change? And you can't see as much detail as I would like to see by just seeing the current version. So that is a lot of what Team Foundation Server allows us to do, is to see every version, every change that was made, the change that was made today, the change that's made tomorrow, change that was made a month ago or 6 months ago. We can see each of them, and we'll look at that. But in order to do that, we first have to get set up with Visual Studio Team Services. And so that's what I'm going to do first. So let me stop the PowerPoint, and I'm now going to switch to Visual Studio, to the website. And we'll get things organized in a second here. So I'm going to pull up a Visual Studio link, and I thought I had that link saved, but let me see if I can just find it here. So while this is coming up, let me sorry, I'm getting my screen organized and trying to talk at the same time. So here I've gotten to the Visual Studio Team Services web page. And in my blog, I will have a link that shows you how to get to this page, but it's basically going to visualstudio.com and then logging in with with your Microsoft account. Now, I've already logged in here, and so this shows that I already have a project, but one of the, when you come in the first time, it will create your first project for you as part of the initial connection process. If you wanted to create your own project, if you're not happy with that one, you can click on this new button to create a new project, and in a moment it will come up and ask you what do you want to call the project. So I might call this NAV Development for XYZ Manufacturing. So this, here I'm imagining that maybe I work for XYZ Manufacturing as their in-house developer, and that I want to keep track of all of the modifications that are done, both by myself but also by my partner. And so the first thing I would do is to create this team project for doing that, and I could put a description in there for describing what I intend to use that for basically for all of the NAV modifications. And at this point, I would click on the Create Project. It will spin for a few moments or a minute or so, and there it is basically creating the structure in the Visual Studio Cloud for our project, for this XYZ Manufacturing NAV development. And at that point, we can then add additional structure to that. So I'm going to switch to the project that I had previously created. And there's a variety of information available on here. I'm not going to go into most of this at this point. At this point, I'm going to want to open this up in Visual Studio, and there's a link to open this in Visual Studio. Before I do this, let me talk a little bit about which versions of Visual Studio you can use. For this webinar, I'm using Visual Studio 2013 Express Edition. That's a free version of Visual Studio. And Yeah, and it works perfectly fine. I've been all of the work that I've done in preparing for this, I've done with Visual Studio 2013 Express. It also works with more current versions, Visual Studio 2015, for example. And it can work with older versions of Visual Studio, but there's some extra hoops that you will have to jump through. So I would recommend using Visual Studio 2013 or more current versions. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Open in Visual Studio, and that will bring up my Visual Studio and I'm going to switch to the Source Control Explorer, and here you will see this NAV project. This is that same NAV project that I had created, and in fact the NAV Development for XYZ Manufacturing that I just created just a moment ago also popped up here. So if I switch to that one, at the moment it does not have the folder structure that I would like. So let me switch back to the NAV, and this you can set up this folder structure however it makes sense to you, but I would suggest something like this folder structure. The build process templates is one that comes in automatically. I'm not going to talk more about that today, but the ones that I wanted to talk about, I mean, this is just a folder structure for storing our code. But at Innovia, we have one which is called Microsoft, and under Microsoft, I've created a folder for NA, that's for the North American code, and then a separate one for the W1, the worldwide code. And most of what I will do will be with the North American code. I won't go into more detail about the W1 code, but if I then drill into North America, I have separate folders for each version of NAV, so starting with 2013, 2013 R2, 2015, and 2016. And if I drill into 2016, basically there's only one set of objects that I have there, but and I'll come back to this later because as you may know, Microsoft releases an update every month for their code. So I believe in last October, they released the release version of NAV 2016, but then starting probably on November 1st or thereabouts, they released an update roll-up or a cumulative update for that, and then they did that again December 1st, January 1st, and February 1st, so there have been several update roll-ups. In fact, let me go ahead and show how that appears in here. If I right-click on the objects associated with NAV 2016 in Visual Studio, there's an option to view history. And so we have the base version, I just called that NAV 2016, and then the cumulative updates, I've imported those as what are called change sets, and I've imported in 3 different change sets. For the update 1 was probably November 1st, update 2 December 1st, and update 3 January 1st. So that is how the data is organized, and I'll come back later and look at what we can do with that data and how that shows the information. But for now, I just wanted to show the structure. And so one of the things that we need to do periodically, like for example, when NAV 2017 comes out, we will want to create a folder for NAV 2017. And so if I select that I'm on the North America, the NA folder, there's a new folder icon at the top. If I click on that, that creates the new folder, and then I can name that 2017. So that is how I add new folders in the future. And I do a similar thing with, I have a similar structure for add-ons. So here, 2 of the more common add-ons that we deal with at Innovia are the ChargeLogix add-on and the Lanham. And actually under Lanham, we have eShip and warehouse manufacturing, and actually there's more than that I could put here. So this is just a way to have a place to store the code for each of these add-ons. And in fact, as with NAV, I need to keep track of, oh well, I need the NAV, the version of the add-on for each version of NAV, so I create a separate folder under the add-on. So I have one for 2015 and 2016. As you saw before, I could add 2013 and 2013 R2 here as well. And then the last thing that I wanted to show is where how we keep track of our different clients. So at Innovia, we have a fairly large number of clients. I don't even know the number. I think it's like around 50 or 100 clients that we have. But here I just put in just 3 imaginary clients, and so if I wanted to add our XYZ manufacturing, I would just do the same thing as I did a moment ago for NAV 2017. Here I'll put in XYZ manufacturing as our newest client. So that, let me pause there for a second and pull up my PowerPoint and the PowerPoint wants to switch. Let's see. Well, I want to, let's see. So there's two more concepts that I want, or a concept and another piece that I want to talk about here. And then once I get through these, we'll pause for a moment for your questions. So there's a key concept that I want to talk about, and this is the difference between the Team Foundation Server workspace, the difference between the team folder that's in Team Foundation Server and the local folder. Now, the team folder is where all of the different versions of my code are located. So I mentioned earlier with the sales header table, that I have, the original version that Microsoft came out with. There's a version, that has the Lanham add-ons in it. There's the modifications that I've done, the modifications other developers have done, and all of those are combined together in your NAV database. The NAV database has all of that in it. But in Team Foundation Server, it has separate change sets for each time that somebody made a change and checked it into Team Foundation Server. You can see all of those versions. And we saw that a moment ago when I looked at the different cumulative updates for NAV. So we have the original NAV 2016 and then cumulative update 1, 2, and 3. So that's the server version, or the team folder. But on my local computer, I have a folder where I keep one version, and normally, most of the time, it's the version that matches the NAV database that I'm working with, and that's called the local folder. And so kind of summarizing that, the server folder is where all of the different versions are kept, and that could be either in the cloud or it could be a Team Foundation server that your company has. I recommend doing it in the cloud and not having to worry about maintaining that extra server, but you can certainly do it either way. So that's the team folder, and then the local folder is just either the current version, the latest version, or sometimes you might want to work with an earlier version, and there are ways to do that as well. But at one time, you will only be working with one version on your local folder. So let me show that local folder on my computer. And so I've named that CTFS NAV. And here you see that this mirrors that structure that we were looking at a few minutes ago that I created, a folder for Microsoft. And if I drill into that, there's the North American World, the W1. There's our Innovia clients with the XYZ manufacturing. And then also the add-on. So this mirrors that structure. Now, if I go back to Team Foundation Server, it's possible that other developers were modifying the code at the same time that you were. And at Innovia, we have about 8 or 10 developers on our team, and on any project we might have 2 or 3 of them working on that project, or more if it's a larger project. And so in our local copy, we want to have our most current version. So I'm going to, okay, yes, I just had to wait for it for a moment. So for Cronus, there's this function in Visual Studio called Get Latest Version, and this will come up. For me, it says all files are up to date, but if someone else had made some changes, those would have been updated. Now, I found if you forget to do this, I mean, it's something that you should do, but if you forget to do it, when you go to check in your objects, Visual Studio or Team Foundation Services seems like it's really good at recognizing, oh, you didn't have the most current version. You know, what do you want to do there? But it simplifies things if you have the most current version. And the first time that you do this, this get current version, if I had not worked with Cronus before, it would not have a copy of the Cronus objects on my local drive, and so that get current version, get latest version would download all of those files onto my local drive. Now let me go back there for a moment and File Explorer into my Cronus, and if I drill into this, you know, I mentioned that it keeps a local copy. So here is that copy of all of the objects in that client's database. So each code unit, if I scroll down, I'll get down to, let me just type P to get, so I can get to pages, menu suites. So all of the objects are stored in here, and this is the current version. So again, this is the local copy, and then on the server, so there's only one copy here, but on the server out in the cloud, all of the versions are stored. So I will talk more in a moment about that, but let me pause here for a bit and see if any questions have come in. So Abby, has anyone asked any questions yet, or?
So far, no questions, Joseph.
Okay, well that's fine. I'll keep talking, and again, if you do have questions as I'm talking, be sure to send them to Abby, and we'll certainly have time at the end to look at those questions. So let me get back to my slideshow. So now I want to talk about creating a new project in Team Foundation Server. And the example that I'm going to use is, this would be a moderate to large project for Innovia. The example is a company named XYZ Manufacturing has been using for NAV for many years. They've come to Inovia Consulting and asked us to assist them with implementing the Lanham warehousing add-on. So the first step we've already done. I mean, this would be the example where we have not been managing XYZ Manufacturing's modifications in NAV up to this point. We started at Inovia using Team Foundation Server a couple years ago, but maybe XYZ Manufacturing, they were happy with their NAV code, and we didn't do any big projects for them, so we didn't take the time to set them up in Team Foundation Server. So if that's the case, we would have to do these first 3 steps just to get started using Team Foundation Server. And so if you are someone that wants to start using Team Foundation Server to manage your modifications for your company, and you haven't been doing it, these first 3 steps you'll have to do one time. But then going forward, if you keep Team Foundation Server up to date with any changes that you make to your NAV code, then you won't have to repeat those steps. So the first step we've already done, created a folder for XYZ Manufacturing. The second step is to branch from a base NAV version to create the starting point for XYZ Manufacturing and Team Foundation Server. So let's switch over and look at what that means. So I'm now working with XYZ Manufacturing, and let's suppose that XYZ Manufacturing is using NAV 2016. So what I would do is in Visual Studio in Source Control Explorer, I drill into and find the NAV 2016 folder, and and I mentioned earlier that that we have multiple cumulative updates. Now Microsoft recommends that you update your, you use the most current cumulative updates. But at least for now, most of our clients don't update every month. We're working on figuring out how to enable you to do that, but most of our clients have the most current update at the time that we started a project, like a new project for them, or an upgrade, the current version when we started the upgrade. For this example, I'm going to start with assume that XYZ Manufacturing that they did not have any cumulative updates. They're on the base version of NAV 2016. What I need to do to start XYZ Manufacturing is I need to create a branch from the standard version of NAV 2016, the North American release version. So I'm going to click on the objects for that version and right-click on it and select branching and merging, and then select branch. And since they're not on the latest version, I'm going to say I want from a specific change set. And if I search, let's see, that's not what I wanted. So if I drill into the find change sets, I can see the different versions, and I want, as I said, I want the base version, so that's change set 10. So I say OK, and then I tell it to create a branch, and it tells me some information. The branch will be created and committed as a single operation on the server. I won't go into detail what that all means, but I'm going to say yes, continue to branch. And this will take a couple minutes. Well, maybe it was faster. Well, I didn't put it where I wanted to put it. So let me, the branch, I wanted to put it under XYZ manufacturing. It put it under my 9.0. So I think I can delete that branch or roll it back. I'm not going to do that for now. Let me do this step that I did again. I went to branch. And I want to do it by change set. I drill into the change set, and so I find my change set. So I select change set 10. So that's my source. But now my target, this is the step that I forgot to do a moment ago. I need to, instead of having it go to where by default where it was in my 9.0 folder, I want to go up to my XYZ manufacturing folder and create the branch there. So I will now repeat that and say yes. And so now under XYZ manufacturing, I need to check in. I had not checked in the folder or the, and then, so I want to check in the folder and then also the, this code that I just branched in. So I will check in, and now it's telling me that there's a conflict. So I'm going to tell it to take the server version. And now when I do the check-in, I need to make a comment that describes what that change set is. And so I'm going to call this base NAV 2016 for XYZ. For XYZ manufacturing.
And Joseph, just as a timekeeping
Yes.
reminder, we do have 10 minutes left in our presentation.
Okay. So thank you, Abby. And so I'm now checking that in, or it's successfully checked in. So if I now get back to my source control folder. I'll come back to that in a moment. So we have our folder here for XYZ manufacturing, and at this point then I would normally do a get latest version that would copy the objects to our local drive. So I'm going to skip ahead a bit. I'll spend about 5 more minutes and then open it up for questions. And I'm certain I'm not going to get through everything that I wanted. I was concerned that might happen today, so we will have a follow-up webinar. But once we have our base version of NAV created, our next step would be to import in, to bring in a change set, the modifications associated with a change. So for that, I'm going to do a simple change, and I'll make it as simple as possible. The one that I talked about earlier of adding a field to the sales header table. This created by user ID. So I'll make it 50,000 created by user ID. I'll make that code 50, and I'll save that. So this is just to get a simple modification that we can check in to see how you get code into NAV. And of course it's running slowly while I'm doing that. So while it's doing that, what I would like to do is switch over and one of the things I wanted to talk about was how we use the code once it's checked in. And so let me do that now, and let me switch to the PowerPoint for a second. I'm going to skip this slide. I need to switch. So what I want to kind of conclude with is how we use the information once we get it checked in. I won't have time to look at some of the other things about how to get the information in, but how we see a history, how we could revert back to a previous version if we run into unexpected issues, or see all of the objects associated with a given project, or drill into those objects to see exactly what was changed for a given project. So let me look into a few of those in the next couple minutes. So for that, I'm going to use my Cronus database. If I look at the view history, that's not a very good one. Let's see if I have another one that's better. That may be okay. Well, I guess this Cronus is the best one that I have. So if I view the history, yeah, this is. Yeah, this isn't what I needed to show. Let's see. Well, I'm going to try doing something else. Let me take just a moment to try to get that connected. Okay. What I am going to do is look at one of our new projects. It's called Flat Out, and use that and as just to show you what this history looks like. And this is kind of a real world example. So here we can see all of the change sets associated with this project. So as an example, I did a couple of modifications related to what we call profile configurations. So if I wanted to see what was involved in one of these, which objects were involved, I can right-click on it and see change set details. And I see, oh, it's page 42 and page 9057. And I can click on the object, and it brings up that object, that the version that I checked in. I can also compare it with the previous version to see, so that would tell me what changed, what did I do that was different compared to what was done before. And so this is a page, so I promoted this post and email action, and it looks like that was the only change here. Now, another thing that, well, actually, let me go into the change set details again. So I guess so we could view it there, but if we went to the actual objects and I won't scroll down to find it, but let's just look at page 1. Yeah, that one doesn't have any. Let me do page 21. That one, I'm guessing, will have some history. So there were several changes. So if I wanted to, if there was a problem, so we can see there was a change on January 13th, one on the 15th, one on the 22nd, and then on the 2nd. And suppose, on February 4th, somebody came in and said, oh my gosh, whatever you did a couple days ago, now I can't do something that I need to do. What you can do is, you could see what was done on that day, but you could also use this get this version function, and that will download the January 22nd version to my local workspace, and then I can import that in and see if that resolves the issue. So that at least gives you a flavor of some of the things that you can do. And since we're about out of time, I guess I will stop for questions now, and we will continue this in a follow-up webinar in the next week or so. So, Abby, do you have any questions come in?
Yes, we do have some questions, Joseph. I just want to remind everybody that since we are over on time, if anybody needs to drop off, we will have the recording of this webinar on the site innovia.com later this afternoon. So jumping into the questions here, Joseph, here's the first one. When you set up Workspace, do you choose the location as local or server?
So when you set up the workspace, you have to do both. And let me see if I can get to that. And so let me switch back to my local one. I was back on our server version, but there's a configure option. I'm not sure I can get to it quickly, but under the configure option, there are two folders. When you first go in, there will be two folders that you need. You have the option to configure. One is the server location, and normally you would not need to change that wherever Visual Studio wants to put that in the server. I'm generally been fine with, but the one that normally that you would do would be your local workspace, and that is the one that you would, in my case, I would point it to CTFS_NAV. And Let me see if I can get back there quickly. If I don't get there. Um, and since this isn't something I do every day, I don't remember the I'm not finding the spot at the moment. Where you make that configuration change.
One of our attendees said under Manage Workspaces, Edit Advanced.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so here it's so under Manage Workspaces, and then you highlight the workspace, select Edit, and so it shows the source control folder, and that's the one that I don't normally change. And then the local folder, and normally I just set this the first time that I create the team project, and then leave it set there. And you can also see it in this advanced structure. But it's the same two folders. The source control folder, that's the version out on the cloud, and then the local folder is the single version that's on your laptop.
Okay.
Does that answer that question?
We'll have to see
or is
if
there
that.
Another question?
Yeah, we have more questions. How do you resolve conflicts between two or more developers working on the same project? Excuse me, working on the same object?
I will talk a little bit about that, but it's beyond the scope of what I can answer in the next few minutes. But one way to do it would be for when a developer starts to work on a given object, they can check out the object in Team Foundation server. And so if you have a process where whenever you start to work on a given object, you check it out, and Team Foundation server, it will say this object is checked out by, if I checked it out, it would say by Joseph Gress. And then if my colleague Brad wanted to work on it, he would go and see that it's checked out. One option would be for him to wait until I'm done and check it in. And that's the simplest way. But if both of you want to work on the same object, let's say code unit 80, the sales order posting code unit at the same time, you can still do that. But then when the second one goes to check it in, there's a merge process that would need to be done, and that could be done in Team Foundation server or done in a tool like Beyond Compare to make sure that both versions are checked in. But beyond that, I'm not prepared to go into that in more detail today.
Okay.
Any other questions or follow-up questions?
Yeah, we do have one final question here. We have permission to a subset of NAV objects. Would we have Enovia export all objects from NAV for us to get started with source control?
That would be an option. And if with your license you're not able to export certain types of objects, like let's say code units or certain code units, then we would be happy to do that for you. It would be simplest if we have if we have a current copy of your database on our server, but if need be, we can log on to your server and switch to an Innovia's license and export the objects that you need.
Okay, well, those were all of the
Okay.
questions we had, Joseph. So thank you for that presentation. And I want to remind everybody the recording will be up on our website by the end of the day. And as soon as we get our follow-up webinar scheduled, we will send out an invitation so that you can join us for the next one.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.